Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Concussion Pro 1, the world's first dedicated concussion supplement. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and tonight the podcast is in collaboration with the Lock-Cast, and therefore joining me is a good friend of mine over on MMA Twitter and all the way from Canada, Lock of the Night. Lock, how are you doing tonight, bro?
Perfect, man. I'm glad that that we collaborated on this. We got this podcast going. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier in the year, but I'm excited to get it going and do it with you, man.
Awesome, man. So you might be wondering what the purpose of this podcast is about. Well, we have an announcement to make, and then as we're both MMA handicappers, we're going to be doing a fun review of 2018 from a gambling perspective. How does that sound to you, man?
Oh, dude, I can't wait. I'm excited to shit on myself and also pat myself on the back while we're doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get straight to the announcement first of all. We did mention this on Twitter a couple of months ago, but we are going to be adding a new section and a new feature on the Newsome MMA website called Tape Index. This will be in association with the Lock Fight League, which is actually your online UFC 3 simulation competition, which you run on Twitch, right, man?
Yes, sir. Every fight week, we choose probably about Wednesday or Thursday of fight week. We do a simulation online, all CPU simulated. Everybody pitches in about $5 to $10 a season. And yeah, man, you just pick one fighter. If they win the entire season, you win the pot, or at least a portion of the pot if somebody else picked the same fighter as you. So it's a little bit of a community that I'm trying to start. We talk some shit on the stream. We have some fun, and we see some fun little CPU simulated knockouts on UFC 3.
Awesome, man. So, Tape Index. It'll be under the betting services section in the navigation menu on the Newsome MMA website, and it'll be a page that consists of external links directly linking gamblers to previous relevant fights of fighters on upcoming UFC fight cards. We will also include any links of any interviews for each fighter for the upcoming fight card, where you'll likely hear the familiar voices of the likes of James Lynch, Submission Radio, Kumite Radio, and even myself. And finally, we'll include links to the fighters' Instagram accounts too, which can sometimes provide great insights for MMA gamblers as well. I mean, I love this idea. I think it's going to help a lot of handicappers out, right, Lock?
Dude, as soon as you came up with this idea to me and kind of the genesis of it and seeing how it evolved as we, kept bouncing ideas off each other, I was excited for it, man. And I'm excited to see it come to fruition in terms of how it's going to help not just ourselves, but everybody else. You have this one-stop shop where you can just come in and see all the fights that kind of have a bit of a meaning for the actual matchup that's coming up. Or, you can kind of just skim through the rest of the record and you don't have to worry about certain fights where there's certain stylistic matchups that don't really come into play with the fight that's coming up. So I'm hoping that we can save people a lot of time, and we might even see some positives come out of it from other people as well. And, I'm hoping that we can continue to make it bigger and bigger, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Absolutely, and something you've just mentioned as well, which is a good point, is the style versus stylistic matchup for each fight. Now, obviously, that's going to take a little bit of trust from other people towards us. But listen, we've been doing this game a while now. We're profiting, we're winning. We can read fights, and it's we're not saying that anybody else can't read fights, but it's just a help. If a wrestler's fighting a striker, then you're not going to want to watch much tape on the wrestler fighting a wrestler. You're going to want to watch tape on the wrestler fighting a striker, and that's the sort of thing that we're going to be putting together in here. So for me, it's almost like a package of everything that you need when you come into a handicap MMA fight.
It really comes down to also just finding the tape, man. That's really time consuming, and for a lot of people that maybe aren't doing this full time, or are kind of strapped for time, at least they can just come straight to the tape index and be like, oh, all right, here's their freaking fight from LFA, or here's their fight from some little dingy basement in Thailand. Somehow we'll find it. We got a lot of resources. We got a lot of friends in the game as well. And I'm sure that we can always, find the tape that's required to make the logical and educated bet on the upcoming matchups.
Absolutely, and just a quick few points from my perspective. I'll personally be using this section. It drives me mad traveling around the internet, going from fight to fight. Time is money at the end of the day, and especially when you get a full fight card and you have to keep scrubbing up until you arrive at that specific fight within the entire fight card. With Tape Index, we'll give you a link and then a skip to 1 hour 32 minutes, for example, so you can get straight to that fight without, again, like you said, wasting any time. And I think this will be perfect for fighters making their UFC debuts for obvious reasons, because, you would initially go straight to Fight Pass. But even UFC Fight Pass doesn't have some of the UFC fights easily available to find on their app. So giving a direct link to the fight on Fight Pass will help in a lot of circumstances as well. We'll look to get this tape index list up for a fight card around 2 weeks before the event, which should give handicappers more than enough time for their tape. And we'll expand to other promotions as well. So you've just mentioned LFA, CES, RFA. We could go, the list goes on. We'll expand for whatever we feel is relevant. And another point to mention is people asked when we first mentioned this on Twitter is this will not be behind a paywall. It'll be totally free and accessible to everybody. And finally, last thing from me before we move on to the MMA Handicapping 2018 review, we can confirm that the tape index will be up and running from February's fight cards, and the link for the tape index at the time will be posted out on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook when it's live. So Lock, taking all that into consideration, have you got anything more to add on tape index, man?
I feel like we've hit pretty much all the points on this. I mean, it's going to be a great service. I can't wait. Again, free service as well. I can't wait for it to get out there. I can't wait for the traction for it to start picking up. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of suggestions and maybe some critiques here and there from people too. And it's just going to be an evolving kind of thing that we're doing. Like I know you and me. We're always open to constructive criticism. We're open to doing anything that will help the gears and the working of this actual tape index just to make it easier and smoother. Like, you just want to go to the website, click on the link of a fight and just start watching the fight right away. Like, we're just trying to make it as easy as possible. And I'm fucking excited to see where it goes, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one quick shout out as well, because I would imagine this is a guy that we're going to be using, a little bit when we're struggling to find tape ourselves, because sometimes it is really, really hard to find specific fights. But Mr. Honky out there on Twitter, that dude is a library in himself.
That's my dude, man. That's my dude. Sure. That guy has any and everything you want, any and everything in terms of regional fights. UFC, all that shit. This guy is gonna find it somehow, some way. So big shout out to him, and I'm sure we're gonna be leaning on him a little bit here and there.
Absolutely. And we move on. So, Lock, I'm really looking forward to this MMA Handicapping 2018 review. We've both had an amazing 2018 with a lot of profit made between us, which, if I'm honest, it's quite impressive when you consider that we stay disciplined and stick to a 1 to 5 unit betting scale without being reckless on events and staying under 10 units per fight card. I mean, I talk generally here because sometimes there are fights where a fighter has such an incredible betting line that you have to take advantage of it and bet slightly more than 5 units. And the same goes for the fight cards too. There's certain fight cards that have so many great spots that you sometimes do have to go above 10 units, but it is what it is. But staying disciplined and having such a great year doing it really does feel good, right, bro?
Oh, for sure. Trust me. Like my first year doing it, I only profited single digit units that in 2017, but in 2018, I made some adjustments on the way, thanks to you, thanks to a couple of our other friends. And it really turned some dividends, and it was great. And I'm happy, even though I ended off UFC 232 with an L, it still ended off a great event, or a great year, betting wise. So I'm really looking forward to going over these categories that we got. We haven't even discussed in terms of specific picks that we have for these, so I'm excited to see what you have, and I'm hoping that some of the ones that I have surprise you as well.
Yeah, and I'm also interested to see if we've got any of the same as well, because there's a few that I was looking at down here that I think that could be quite similar for sure. Well, let's get straight into it. We'll take turns to go first here, and you could go first, Lock. So the first one, best bet of the year. This is the time to pat yourself on the back, big you up, man. What's the best bet of 2018 for yourself?
Well, there was a couple that I was looking at, two that I'll, one of my honorable mentions, I should say, is Corey Anderson by decision against Glover Teixeira. It was plus 365. I took a small 0.5 unit stop on it. The only issue in that fight was if Corey Anderson was going to get clipped. He did not. He stuck to the game plan just like he did against Latifi last night. But I got to say my best bet of the year, especially considering all the criticism I got around it, the 1 unit that I took on Shogun plus 400 against Tyson Pedro, as soon as I posted that bet, it was a free bet as well. Everybody kind of just started shitting on me right away. Like, this is the worst take. Why would you even waste your units on this or waste your money on this? But, going into that fight, the one main liability or flaw that you really had to consider with Tyson Pedro was his fight IQ. And lo and behold, it came into play. And at plus 400, I stated this even before the fight. Tyson Pedro, nobody should be a plus 400 against Tyson Pedro. I don't give a fuck who it is, even if it's Cyril Lasco's little brother. I don't care. Nobody
Cyril
should
Lasco
be.
has a little brother?
If he does, you know what I mean? I saw somebody post up one of his arch nemesises or something earlier this week. But regardless, Shogun plus 400, I put 1 unit on it, got 4 units in return. It was one of my more prouder moments. You have this gut feeling, and you just fucking go with it. And even with the tape and everything that we know about Tyson Pedro, it seemed like a no-brainer to me. So I'd say my best bet of the year, 1 unit, Shogun plus 400 against Tyson Pedro.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a couple that I was toying between. So honourable mention for me would be Carlos Diego Ferreira against Jared Gordon. Similar reasons to yourself, a lot of people was just like, bro, what are you doing? Jared Gordon's going to run through him, the layoff, the rust, etc. And it was just a great bet, and it cashed very, very easily in round number 1. But the bet that I've gone with is Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic at UFC 226. In July for their heavyweight championship of the world. So I put 2 units on DC in that fight at plus 240. Man, it cashed me 4.8 units. It was a nuts line. It started off, I think it opened quite badly. This DC shouldn't have been plus money in this fight. In my opinion, it should have been a pick'em fight at worst. If Stipe did edge into sort of a slight favourite, I could maybe understand that to an extent. But getting plus 240 for Daniel Cormier in that fight, and he went out and knocked him out in round 1 as well. So it's not as if it was even a sweat. Daniel Cormier is smart. His fight IQ is on point. His wrestling's ridiculous. Like I say, I'm surprised his hands looked as good as what they did. But that's heavyweights, man. We knew DC was going to have the wrestling advantage. He was likely going to have a cardio advantage as well. The dude had never even lost a round at heavyweight, yet he was plus 240 against Stipe Miocic, and that's against a guy that, yes, he broke the record for the amount of times he defended the heavyweight championship in the UFC, but he was never a fighter that I was completely sold on. So when I saw the plus 240 on Daniel Cormier, it was an absolute no-brainer. So for me, that's my best bet of the year.
Dude, we went back and forth with that when that line was released as well. We were both like kind of mystified and like completely taken aback by the fact that the line was so wide and the amount of people that were actually giving Stipe respect and actually betting him. I was very surprised.
And just a quick point to make on that as well, because obviously we've got a very, very small group on Twitter and we bounce stuff about and things like that. So a lot of people won't actually know this, but I very nearly hedged Stipe Miocic by knockout in that fight as well after Daniel Cormier tripped over, was it the wire? Or the weigh-ins, one of the two. And, he hobbled off. At that point, I was thinking just the worst. And I nearly hedged Miocic by knockout in that fight, and I'm so glad I didn't. Again, just adding to the best bet of the year for me. So we move on to the next, which is worst bet of the year. And man, I'm up first. And again, this is one that I think you're going to be really familiar with. Just an awful bet. I put 4 units at minus 225. A card from 1FC. It was 1FC 77, and it was Ajilan Tani. Now, man, I watched the tape. I was impressed with what I saw. Ajilan Tani was primarily a wrestler, good takedowns, good pace, looked like he had decent cardio. Coming up fighting Kadistrom, man, it just didn't play out like that at all. And part of me thinks that was probably down to me seeing something in tape that just didn't happen in the fight, which does happen from time to time. But the bottom line is, there was only so much research you can do, and that was the tape. There was no real background research, looking through interviews and seeing what the fighter was like at the time, how he looked on things like Instagram, all the little pieces that you put together to build a jigsaw, so to speak, when you're making your bet. And there was just none of that, and it turned out that Tani had slipped a disc in his back. I think it was like 6 weeks prior to the fight, so his camp got cut short. And it was little things like that where I don't mind taking the shot, but I should not have been hitting 4 units on a minus 225 unknown that anything could have happened during camps, which it did. And Tani went out there, he couldn't get his takedowns. I pride myself in knowing, studying wrestling and grappling. I'm absolutely convinced that Agilan Tani just had a lot of issues trying to get takedowns in that fight, purely because of the injury that he may have had to his back that may have still been niggling at the time of the fight as well. So it definitely showed in the fight. It was an ugly fight. He arguably won round 1, but it was close. He definitely lost round 2, and then he got knocked out. So yeah, an absolute awful bet from me. You know, this game, you learn, man. Like, no one's perfect and everyone makes awful bets, and that's mine. So what's your worst bet of the year, Lock?
Before I get into mine, I'm going to take a little bit of blame on that Agilan Tani bet. I may have been the one that was circling that out there, you know, throwing out some feelers and seeing what you guys were thinking about it too. But, you know, everything that we saw on tape for that fight had Agilan Tani completely grinding out that fight and winning, you know, a wrestling type decision or something like that. But
I own that. You know, in this game, everyone throws about what we like to call seeds. So
yes,
I'll throw people seeds, people throw me seeds, and it's just basically working together to say, look, I've checked this guy out and I think he's good. Go and look for yourself. And at that point, the handicapper, the gambler, the bettor, whatever you want to call that person, will go out and, you know, they'll look at that fight and they'll see what they think and, you know, whether they agree with the other person or not. Sometimes it's happened to me and I'll come back and I'll say, nah, I don't agree with you, but good luck. I hope you cash. There's other times where I'll come back and I'll say, you know, shit, yeah, I get exactly what you mean. And I like this dude too. So, you know, no blame from your part. I do my own research, I do my own tape study, and I 100% own that, man.
Yeah, honestly, like you said, it all comes down to the siege. I mean, like, as we're friends all in the handicapping community, we like to throw it out here and there, but it all comes down to yourself and trusting your own reads and seeing what you see on tape and seeing other information that you can gather. So, you know, I lost 5 unit on that one as well. I made him my lock of the night for that ONE FC card. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that I haven't bet on a ONE FC card since. So that fight alone kind of scared me away.
Same, man, for sure.
But in terms of my worst bet of the year, it came down to 2. My honorable mention, I'd say, would be Arjun Buller against Adam Wizardchek. That one was just demoralizing, dude. Like, I considering the tape on Wizardchek and his prior fight with Anthony Hamilton and anything that we've seen in the past, like, I knew the submission threat was kind of there, but I thought the Olympic style wrestling from Arjun Buller and just his top pressure and kind of even his pace. I mean, he's kind of a mobile heavyweight compared to the rest of the division. But once you got him down and I saw Wizardchek's leg come over for that omoplata, I was just like, oh God, there's no way. And even earlier in that night, I had lost Matthew Lopez against Alejandro Perez, which I believe you were on as well. But man, like that night was just a shit show. So that's actually my honorable mention. But I'd say my worst bet of the year came actually on the Dana White Contender Series, and it's the last time I bet on the Dana White Contender Series as well. Jamal Emmers, I took him at -203.
Yeah, I remember that.
Against Juicy J, Julian Erosa. So, you know, there was a clear path to victory for Jamal Emmers in that fight. You know, I mean, he clearly had the grappling advantage. I think he just had the better overall MMA game. But I don't know what the hell happened to him between rounds 1 and 2, where he just decided to say fuck it and, you know, get that contract and try to get some sort of destructive KO finish or something highlight reel worthy. And then Erosa, you know, he's a pretty decent striker, and he was able to, you know, take what Emmers was throwing at him in a wild and violent fashion, and he was able to pick him apart and get the finish there. So as I was watching that transpire, I was just like, fuck, man, like you really gotta take into consideration the outside factors that may impact some fights. And in this instance, you know, these guys are competing for a fucking contract from Dana White right in front of him. They're alone pretty much in an Ultimate Fighter gym. You know, whoever gets the most flashiest finish or flashiest win probably gets a contract, and that's probably what came into Jamal Emmers' head, and that's really like that's really put me away from betting on any Contender Series fight. The only time I bet on a Contender Series fight after that was one of the heavyweight fights to not go to a decision, and you know that one's pretty much a gimme. But if you want to bet on a specific fighter themselves, you really got to take into consideration if they are to go wild. You know, are they actually, you know, do they have some sort of controlled chaos where they can, you know, be flashy and throw like a John Jones type of thing. You know what I mean? Where they can be flashy, but they're still in control of their senses and not going too wild. So, Jamal Emers showed his flaws, showed, the dangers of competing on the Contender Series, and I paid for it. So, but that's what you got to do as a handicapper. You see these things, you recognize these things, and you try not making the same mistakes moving forward. So that was the last time or second last time I bet on a Contender Series fight, and I don't know if I'll be doing it in 2019 either. It really needs to come down to a fight doesn't go to decision type of prop for me to shell out some money on the Contender Series again. That's pretty much what I got on the Emers, minus 203, minus 5 units on that shit. So. Fuck sure. That.
So yes. We move on to the next one. Luckiest bet of the year. This one was really, really easy for me. But Lock, it's your turn. You're up next. What was your luckiest bet of the year?
Okay, my luckiest bet. So there's 3 that I had written down. I got one of them was Tom Duquesnoy getting that gift of a decision over Terrion Ware. When you get a gift of a split decision, you just fucking take it pretty much. Oleinik inside the distance plus 210 against Mark Hunt. We knew the only way for Oleinik to win that fight was if it got to the ground. And I don't know, I told you guys leading up to that fight, I just had this gut feeling that somehow, some way, this fight was going to end up on the ground and old man Oleinik was going to snatch a sub, and he did. But for me, I was really sweating this one out. It was my lock of the night play for UFC Atlantic City. Edson Barboza versus Kevin Lee fight doesn't go to decision. I got 5 units on that, minus 170. And if you remember, that shit went all the way to the 5th round, last minute of the 5th round, where the doctor decided to come in and stop it. Dude, I'm sure you were sweating just as much. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Kevin Lee, Edson Barboza was just like that Brazilian zombie that night. You know what I mean? He was taking all the damage in the world. And then finally the doctor came in and saved the day, saved our bankrolls. And saved a couple years off of Barboza's life as well. Who knows what could have happened in that extra minute if Lee, probably went for a little bit more. But that one I was sweating all the way to the 24th minute. But thankfully it paid off. It probably should have been done a little bit earlier, but it is what it is. We got the cash at the end of the day, and I'd say that's my luckiest bet of 2018.
Absolutely, and for me as well, that on that night, because that was the main event. I actually needed, it came down to that last fight, and I needed Kevin Lee to win, and I needed it not to go the distance. So in 2 separate bets, so basically I needed Lee to finish. So yeah, I was definitely
that was a sweat,
as well.
Dude.
For me though, it's
actually I put it out on Twitter. I'm like, whoever that doctor is, I will marry them. I don't know if it's a male, female. I don't care who it is. You saved me my bankroll that night. You continued my winning streak. But it was great, I'm glad the fight didn't go to decision there, and I thought it was a great line too, man. Minus 170 on Kevin Lee. He is kind of known to be a little bit of a finisher, and especially against Edson Barboza, who had those wrestling deficiencies.
Sure.
And he just coming off that spanking from Khabib too, so it's kind of like written on the wall. But I expected Lee to get the finish a little bit earlier, but it is what it is. We got the finish.
Well, like I say, man, mine's very, very easy, and it's one that came recently. UFC Denver in November, Yair Rodriguez. I had 3 units on Yair at plus 125. And, yeah, man, 1 second to go. It was just unbelievable. Like, I personally, a lot of people felt confident that Korean Zombie was winning that fight. I personally wasn't that confident. Now, I would have to go back and rewatch it. I never rewatch fights purely because they always come back around in tape. So, I just use that basis of rewatching fights. It could purely have just been for the fact that, I was in the moment. I'd had the bet. Yair Rodriguez was not fighting anything like what I thought he would fight and what we've seen in previous fights and what I saw in tape. Not fighting anything like that. He was playing into the game of Korean Zombie. So I could have just been, completely sweating that and just looking at things from a different perspective. But man, the judges' scorecards were revealed, and Korean Zombie was definitely winning that fight unanimously, if I believe, as well. So for that knockout to come with 1 second, and he didn't just knock anybody out either. He knocked the Korean Zombie out. The guy is called Korean Zombie for a reason, because the dude is so hard to finish. Then you look at how he finished it. I think he ducked the left hand, and as Korean Zombie's head was coming over the right shoulder of Yair just threw up this crazy elbow from a weird... He shouldn't have knocked him out. I know it was on the button. I know Zombie was leaning in. And honestly, man, I was shocked. Like, when it happened, I thought, was there a clash of heads? Was there something that I didn't
Yes.
see? And then when I saw the replay, I was just like, holy fucking shit, that was nuts. And then when you take all that into consideration, Yair was losing the fight on the scorecards. It was 1 second, 1 second
Dude,
away from
I don't
losing
care
the fight.
I don't care what you bet on. If you bet on anything else other than this bet itself, which is Yair to win, like you couldn't be more luckier. Like you got 1 second, probably the only type of knockout we've seen in that fashion in MMA. Period. I can't recall any other like knockout that's been of that nature. You know what I mean? And again, even the opponent themselves, who's known to take shots like these and just continue walking forward, that is all it took. Perfect timing, perfect, movement of their bodies and everything. It just landed at the perfect time. And luckily for you, after, sweating probably 2 minutes, or what is it, 24 minutes and 59 seconds, you get that little sigh of relief seeing Yair crumble to the floor and just raise his hands like he was in victory. You know what I mean? That's just ridiculous. Like,
Unbelievable.
I could not imagine being in the Newsome household during that event.
Oh man, I was well. I didn't. The thing is, I was shocked. I was shocked more than anything because I didn't know what had happened, and then when I saw the replay, I was just even more shocked. I was just like, what? Like, what the fuck? Like, we're going to be talking about this for years and years and years to come, which we will be. So,
Oh, sure.
on the flip side of that, unluckiest bet of the year now, again, so fucking easy. And I had two choices here. So the honourable mention. So it could have potentially been Alexander Volkov at UFC 229. It was a 5-unit bet at -162. Dominated the fight. Hurt Derek Lewis on multiple occasions. If he was a bit more urgent, could have got the finish again on multiple occasions. 11 seconds away from the end of the fight, he decides to go in the pocket with Lewis, throw a knee, gets caught, gets finished. At that point, because I was on a bit of a dip in form at that point as well, and I just had my head in my hands, man. I'd just been to KSW at 45 in Wembley to cover that event, so I was in my hotel room back after that event, and I just could not believe what happened. But that's only an honourable mention. This is very fucking easy, and honestly, I genuinely feel this is gonna stick with me for the rest of my life. I'll never ever forget this bet, and I think, Lock, if we did this podcast every year for the next 10 years, I don't think I'm gonna have an unluckier bet than this. And you're laughing now. You know exactly what's coming, don't you? You know exactly what's coming.
I feel like I do, but I'll let you put it out there.
So there's a Russian man called Magomed Ankalaev that fought at UFC London in March. I had 4 units on him. Now, the great thing about this is we were all capping this before the lines came out at sort of like potentially -300, -400, fighting Paul Craig, a guy that is looking not the best in the UFC, and against this up and coming Russian with great wrestling and power in his hands, and we're all thinking, this line's going to be unplayable, or at least a parlay piece at the very least. And he comes in on the English books, and my dog actually woke me up by shuffling and grunting. I think it was like 2:30 in the morning, and I just thought, right, I'll look at my phone, I'll go onto a few books, and I saw this line at -189. I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. I should have bet more than what I did on it. He fucking dominated unbelievably. First round, second round, third round. He dominated that much, Lock, that when the judges' scorecards were released after this fight, one of the judges actually written down on his piece of paper, Magomed Ankalaev wins 30-26. This is before the final bell went. He fucking writ that down and then scribbled it out on the sheet of paper. Now, Magomed Ankalaev was on top, was just about to see the round out and win 30-26. And the dude gets caught in a triangle, and it wasn't a second. You said with the Yair Rodriguez thing a minute ago that it was the luckiest thing of all time because it was a second, but this wasn't a second. I'll tell you how close it was. Yeah. It was a third of a second before the fight was due to finish, and Ankalaev was going to get his debut win very easily, very comfortably, and he taps out to a triangle. I've got no words. I cannot explain right now. I can't explain what was going through my mind at that time. This is going to stick with me for years. I can't really say any more than that because I'm as speechless now as what I was then. Unbelievable, man. What about you?
Dude, the one thing that was most impressive about that fight, obviously Ankalaev completely destroying him for 3 full rounds. Let's call it 3 full rounds. And then the quickness and agility that Paul Craig was actually able to lock that up and get the tap was just ridiculous. It was almost instant. As soon as he got got his legs clasped together and was able to pull on the choke, he almost got it like right away. And what was left? How much time was left? Like you were saying, right? Like it's just stupid, just absolutely stupid. So on my end, in terms of unluckiest, the one trend that I just noticed with your, luckiest and unluckiest bets is it came down to seconds. For me, it was 15 minutes of absolute atrociousness, fucking horridness. I'm trying to think of all the worst words that I can think of right now. Because as every second ticked off the clock, my heart just fell deeper and deeper and deeper. I'm talking about the debacle of Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis, of that fight to not go to a decision. I played that shit at minus 245. It obviously got way higher as the fight got closer. Dude, I'm like, okay, one round, that's cool. Maybe they're just feeling it out, seeing what the distance is like, trying to get a little bit more comfortable. 2 rounds done, okay, somebody's got to go for the finish. Who knows who's winning? Maybe Derek Lewis is winning off of 1-2 leg kicks that he's landed. And then the final horn goes. And I was just, my friends were looking over at me. And not only that, one other thing that actually goes into this is I usually do like my Hail Mary untracked parlays. I had a 12-team parlay where everything hit, including the same night Daniel Cormier to win inside the distance. I got plus 425. I added into that parlay. And then this was the worst thing that was on that parlay that didn't allow a $5 parlay, which was supposed to transfer into $4,000.
Wow.
And that is the reason I lost, is Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis just staring at each other for 15 minutes. That was.
Listen, we're both men here. Were you crying?
Dude, the tears? You don't even want to know about the tears, man. Jeez. I was absolutely dumbfounded. Like the only thing that really picked up my spirits that night was DC getting the win there, but fuck, man, I was absolutely just demoralized, and like especially with all the hype that was coming into the fight, and there's always that small chance of these two heavy strikers are probably just going to stare at each other, and maybe they're a little bit scared of engaging. But a guy like Francis Ngannou, who just came off a whooping of Stipe Miocic, you would expect a guy like that to come into this fight with the chip on his shoulder and wanting to be like, yo, I'm back, and that fight against Stipe was just a lull in my career, or a speed bump in my career. And I think a fight against Derek Lewis was more than fitting for him to come back to. And then with Derek Lewis, we know his lingering back issues, but still he goes out there and he puts it on the line. So even if he's immobile and not throwing strikes, you would expect Francis Ngannou to take advantage of that.
For sure.
Nope.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that line closed somewhere in the region of minus 1,500.
I'm not sure about that. I remember seeing it closer to like minus 600 or so, minus 700 at the worst. But dude, like I was just absolutely flattened by that one, and yeah, it really made me take a step back and look at these fight doesn't go to decision props a little bit differently. And but you need these types of things to happen to really get better at your game. And as shitty as it was, and as much as that's going to linger on my mind, I still have the screenshot of that Hail Mary parlay that I had. And it comes up every now and then when I'm going through my camera roll, but it's one that's it's never going to leave my mind, just like this Ankalaev fight. So, yeah, man. So I'd say unluckiest bet for me in 2018, Francis Ngannou, Derek Lewis fight doesn't go to decision. Yeah.
Let's move on. Most profit
Yes,
made on a
please.
single bet lock.
Ooh, all right. This is a fight that we've been talking about pretty much all podcast. DC versus Stipe. You got him at plus 240. I got him at plus 246. I put 2 units on him. I was kicking myself afterwards for not putting more on it. There's a certain thing that goes with unit distribution and making sure that you use your units wisely and not put too much on an underdog. But on this, man, like even when the fight was announced, I was close to even making my lock of the night play. And then when I saw the odds come out, I was like, what am I not seeing that other people are seeing? And then, I ended up going with 2 units. I felt like I could have gone 5, but anybody can say that after a bet cashes.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the most profit I made off of a single bet, 2 units. I made 4.92 units on that bet alone.
Well, mine comes at UFC Hamburg, an event that I was actually there, over in Germany. And you'll know as well, Lock, in the small group that we've got on Twitter, how much I hammered about this fighter for, man, it
Yes.
must have been 2 or 3 months because I saw some really early odds come on BetSafe. I thought, okay, I'll look at this fight because the odds just seemed a little too close for my liking. So I thought, if this is good on one side, I'll hit it. Man, I watched the tape and I actually went the other side. And of course, I'm talking about Emil Mek versus Bartosz Fabinski. And man, once I watched Fabinski, it was everything that I love and pray to see in mixed martial arts. A guy that hates striking, that doesn't like staying on the feet, that will do he'll go from the first bell straight into a takedown. And if he gets stood up for inactivity, he'll just plod straight forward and go straight in for another. I love the guy. I was a bit unsure where the line was going to open in America. I didn't touch it in BetSafe because it was pretty much a pick'em, which they actually opened that right. They opened that correctly. But I knew Emil Mek would have some traction. So I waited till the lines opened. And like I say, man, I was hammering to you guys, like every week, watch this tape because it's going to come, and you're going to want to hit it straight away. And I was just banging on about it for ages. And then as soon as I saw the line, I saw plus 185. In fact, it was the same book, actually. Funnily enough, it was BetSafe. It was same book that had the pick'em that changed the line because we mimic what goes over the pond in America and Canada. So as soon as I saw that plus 185, took it straight away, took it with 3 units. I saw it was dropping over in America as well. So yeah, Bartosz Fabinski plus 185. I put 3 units on that and I ended up winning 5.55 units, which, like I say, was the biggest profit made on a single bet in 2018. So yeah, really happy with that.
I still remember you pretty much almost every day being like, "Have you guys hit it? Have you guys checked it? Have you guys checked it?" I'm like, "Dude, we're getting to it. There's like 3 other events that we still got to study for." He goes, "Trust me, this is the one. This is the one." I'm like, "All right, let's check it out."
For sure,
But
man. And then the flip side of this, and I've just realised as well at the start of this podcast in regards to the handicapping review, I'm going first on all the losses here and all the negative stuff. So brilliant stuff for me. Biggest loss made on a single bet, Mike Perry versus Max Griffin. Also an awful bet as well. And it was actually a contender for my worst bet of the year. I had 6 units on Mike Perry at minus 256. Everything's ridiculous about that. Of course, hindsight's a beautiful thing, and we can sit back now and say, yeah, it was a dumb bet, it was stupid, and you shouldn't be betting Mike Perry at minus 256 ever. But at the time, man, like this, I think a lot of people got caught out by this fighting Max Griffin. Max Griffin hadn't really faced any sort of competition anywhere close to Mike Perry. Mike Perry had gained traction. He'd been knocking everybody out.
That was after the Ellenberger fight, if I'm not mistaken, right?
And he put Ellenberger in a real bad way. I'm sure they came out with the oxygen mask in that fight and had to take him out. So, man, everything was looking good surrounding Mike Perry, and the fight was just, it was so, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was nothing like what anybody expected. He got outstruck on the feet. I think he got taken down at one point as well. He couldn't close distance effectively. And yeah, to have 6 units on that and have to watch 15 minutes knowing that your fight is looking worse and worse as every second goes by, your fighter that is explosive and powerful and just won't pull the trigger, it was just tough to watch, man. So yeah, the biggest loss made on a single bet in 2018 for me was 6 units on Mike Perry at UFC Orlando in February.
The one thing about Perry's loss to Griffin was actually, I think him and probably Francis Ngannou were like the biggest, most popular bets of 2018 among most people. They thought that Francis Ngannou was going to go in there and level Stipe Miocic. Everybody thought that, Mike Perry was going to go in there and completely decimate Max Griffin. And what do we get on both sides is an L on both sides. But, you learn from these things. As I'm sure that you've learned from this, you're probably a little bit more cautious going into a fight and looking at these fights and being like, okay, this guy may have gotten a bunch of knockouts and he's looking fucking awesome. But, you got to really put into perspective what the other fighter could come out with in a different type of game plan we may not have ever seen from them. So you really got to factor these things in.
And just quickly, Lock, just to echo and prove that point as well, I nearly went 6 units in on Christos Giagos a couple of weeks ago. I decided not to, and I parlayed it instead for a couple of units less, and a much better line. Giagos was minus 275, I think, at the time. I ended up getting the parlay at something like minus 140. So, yeah, just to echo that, like I say, the good gamblers, the good handicappers in this game will always learn from mistakes. Always. You always learn, always adjust. Because the game moves as well. MMA moves, things change. So, but yeah, I actually, when I was thinking about putting the 6 units on Giagos, I actually went back and thought about the Mike Perry and Max Griffin fight, and I thought, you know what? No, like, as confident as I am, yeah, you need to learn, man.
Just as we saw with 232, I mean, a lot of people are heavy on Katzengano, and one small thing, a toe in the eye, that could change everything. And I'm sure that ended up making it a losing night for a lot of people, but you got to take those things into consideration. So,
I mean, I don't think anybody anticipated a toenail in the eye. But,
I know.
I get where you're coming from.
Freaking MMA, man. It's MMA. Anything could freaking happen. Freaking Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou stared at each other for 15 minutes. So
let's not get into that.
I know. I'm already starting to cry already. In terms of my biggest loss on a single bet, so everybody's already familiar with my style and strategy of betting. I have my lock of the night plays, which I always try to find at least one play every event where I can go a solid 5 units in. So I've never really gone on a single bet more than 5 units. So I can't really single out a certain play. In terms of my lock of the night plays, I hit an L on 19 of my lock of the night plays out of 43 events this year. So it's hard to actually pinpoint one certain one where I hit the biggest loss. I think that we can go a little bit further into that once we go to most loss on an event, as I can probably single out 2 that I can go to. But in terms of a single bet itself, I can't really, pinpoint one specific bet.
Sweet. So next one, we go straight to most profit made on a single event.
All right. For sure, I can kick that off one. We just talked about this event earlier, one event that you were at live, UFC Hamburg, or Hamburg, however you want to call it. I hope no Germans come and wreck my shit. But I had my lock of the night play that night was Marcin Tybura over Stefan Struve. I had 5 units at minus 235. And then I had 2 dog of the night plays, one seed that you had fed us, and not feed is probably an understatement in terms of how much you shoved it down our throat. But
I hope people haven't tuned in just at that point where we're talking about shoving things down your throat.
But regardless, Mr. Newsome, Bartosz Fabinski versus Emil Mek. I had 2 units at plus 172, so you got a slightly better line than me. But, after watching the tape, it was pretty obvious, that's the pick to make in that fight, especially after me coming off that loss to Kamaru Usman. And one thing I actually wanted to touch on Bartosz Fabinski that we kind of glazed over is, like you said, he likes that forward pressure, and he's always going for the takedown. And one thing that I remember is he had an interview with Brian Stan back in the day where he goes, I asked him if he's going to showcase his improved striking or anything like that. And Bartosz looked right over at Brian Stan and goes, no, I'm going to take him down. That's it. Just he makes it obvious. He knows what the fuck his game plan is. He doesn't want to, show off that he's improved his striking, if he's improved his striking at all. The takedown is always there for him, and he fucking goes for it. But so that was my first dog of the night play. And then my second dog of the night play, I had Corey Anderson via decision, 0.5 units on plus 365. So in total on that event, I had profited 7.39 units for a 99% ROI, pretty much perfect. And yeah, that was a great event, man. From fight to fight, it just kept getting better.
For sure. And man, I'm revisiting UFC Hamburg as well because this is mine.
Hey.
So yeah, UFC in Hamburg back in July. And I just went for a very simple strategy of bet 2 underdogs that I was very confident in them both cashing. Bet them at the same amount of units. Worst case scenario, if one of them loses, I've still profited. But they both ended up winning. So 3 units on Alexander Rakic at plus 138, a stupid line. And I won 4.
Received the dog money again, but continue.
Yeah, for sure, man. I won 4.14 units from that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, 3 units on Bartosz Fabinski at plus 185, which I won 5.55 units on. So in total, it was a 9.69 unit night with 161% return on investment. And man, it pretty much nearly paid for everything, man. The flights over there, the hotel, the ticket, the food, the drink, it nearly covered pretty much the entire trip. So yeah, awesome event for me. Even better being in attendance and watching that money roll in also. Which then brings us to biggest loss made on a single event, and here I am starting off the negative stuff. And it's a recent event, UFC Beijing in November. I had 4.5 units on Curtis Blades at -189, and I had 1.5 units on Song Yadong and Vincent Morales. Fight doesn't go the distance. Song Yadong and Vincent Morales went the distance, and Curtis Blades got knocked out. -6 units on the night, and -100% return on investment. So yeah, really fun. In fact, it wasn't even a night for me, it was a morning. I got up and made my breakfast and a coffee at sort of like 7:30 in the morning. When, went to watch the event at 8. When I say went, I was just laid on my sofa for an entire day and watched the money exit my account. So yeah, what about you, man?
So I actually had 2 events where I lost the same amount of units, probably the most on for the year. So the first one was actually Fox 29, which happened, I think it was headlined by Pettis and Poirier, or if not Poirier and Gaethje. But it was my Arjun Buller bet, which I fucking, still resent to this day. -268. I lost 5 units on him. And then I also had 5 units on Matthew Lopez when he took that L against Alejandro Perez, where the gas tank just fucking left his body much quicker than we were even expecting it to do. But I lost 10 units on that event. I had 2 lock of the night plays on that, so that one sucked. And then the second one, UFC 230. This one was rough, man. I had 4 total bets, 2 lock of the night plays. The first one being Jack Marshman against Carl Roberson. Fight doesn't go to decision, -210. I believe Roberson had sustained some sort of injury during that fight. So Marshman or it was the other way around. I can't really recall.
No. I bet that fight that night, and it was Roberson with the injury.
Yeah, so that really, dragged things out a little bit longer than it should have. And then we had Lando Venata and Matt Favola. Both of their chins held up. I believe it went to a draw as well, but crazy fight. I really thought that both guys had the power to put each other out. However, their durability is showcased a little bit more than their chins. So I took that 5 units at -165. That was an L. And then I had 2 dog of the night plays. One hit, which was DC via sub against Derek Lewis. I only put 0.5 units at +200. And then I had 1 unit on Julio Arce inside the distance against Shimon Moraes. And we all recall the destruction in that fight of Julio Arce.
For sure, man.
So I lost 10 units on that too. So 2 events where I lost 10 units, but we touched on this a little bit earlier in the podcast, where we just, we're trying to be a little bit more disciplined in terms of the amount of units deep we go into an event. And trust me, those 2 have really sat in my mind, and I try not going over, 8 or 9 units per event. So just being a little bit more disciplined moving forward with those. And again, just being more cautious with these fight doesn't go to decisions. If durability comes into play, and even if an injury comes into play, that makes fighters switch up their tactics a little bit and go for a decision rather than a finish.
Sure. And we move on to the sharpest bet of the year. So
yes, sir.
What's the sharpest bet of the year in 2018?
So I feel like my sharpest bet is actually your best bet of the year. DC versus Stipe, man. Like, again, we've hammered this throughout the podcast, but that line is just an absolute gift. Like, it was, I'm still mystified as to how crazy that line was. I got a +246 at 2 units. I felt like it was the sharpest bet just due to the confidence level I had in that bet and how wide the line was. And just for one of the first times ever thinking that, man, like, what the fuck are these odd makers smoking? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy that it was just so wide. And then it was just a little bit more reassured when I saw more action being placed on Stipe with some people. But I felt like that was the sharpest bet of the year, at least on my end.
Man, it wasn't the odds makers. The odds makers opened it a little wide for me, in my opinion, but not disrespectfully wide. It was the public because it opened really early. Like, this line came out a couple of months before the event, so it opened really early, and it was the gradual push from the public, man, that kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And yeah, I just watched the line go from sort of like, I think it opened at +150. Maybe +145, and then it just, like I say, it just gradually increased up to, I think the best, because it cashed, it got was +250, maybe +255, and then it slowly started to come back down again.
Yeah, I was mystified by that, but glad we got the money off that.
Absolutely, man. And I'm taking a slightly different approach to this one for my sharpest bet of the year. So, an honourable mention is Ketlen Vieira and Kat Zingano. So, I just had a really good read on the fight, and this is the approach that I'm taking in regards to not how much I won or how many units I placed, but the read. So, when I watched tape and how well that I read into a specific fight that I almost called what happened down to a T. So, Ketlen Vieira and Kat Zingano, I had 2.5 units on Ketlen Vieira at -120 to win 2.09 units. And honestly, every advantage and disadvantage the woman had against each other in that fight, I was fully aware of. I saw on the tape, and yeah, I just read it perfectly. But the only fight that I read more perfectly than that, and this is the reason why it's my pick for my sharpest bet of the year, and this might come as a bit of a surprise to some people just because it's quite a random fight, I think, and one that won't come to the forefront of people's memories. And it was Brad Tavares against Krzysztof Jotko at UFC Glendale in April. I had 2.5 units on Brad Tavares to win at -128, and I won 1.95 units from it. But man, this was at the point where I didn't have premium bets, so I had brief written breakdowns on my website. I also had a podcast out there breaking the fights down as well. And if you go back and listen to that podcast, and obviously the written breakdowns isn't there anymore, but man, I called this fight to the absolute T. Like everything that pretty much happened in that fight, I called, from aggression to being on the back foot, what Yotko's going to do, what he's going to try and do, what Brad Tavares won't allow him to do, how the styles clash, even down to Brad Tavares. I said something along the lines of Brad Tavares will, he'll keep pushing forward. He won't be there for Yotko's kicks, but he'll be there inside the pocket. He'll move in and out well, etc., etc. And then when it gets to the third round, that'll be when Brad Tavares finishes Yotko. And, Brad Tavares isn't known as primarily a finisher.
More of a point fighter.
Yeah, exactly. So people were surprised that I saw a late finish in that fight. Like I say, it just down to an absolute T. I called that fight as perfect as any gambler or any handicapper can possibly predict a fight. So yeah, that was
probably no other better. Yeah, there's probably no other better feeling in the world than seeing it just play out like to a T, the way that you had described.
For sure, yeah. So, yeah, that's the reason why it's my sharpest bet of the year. And again, in moving into the next one, kicking off stupidest bet of the year. Lucky me. So, my stupidest bet of the year, man, I hold my hands up to this. And, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't give a shit. I'll say I'm wrong. Brett Johns and Aljamain Sterling. I gave Aljamain Sterling a lot of shit on my podcast. Obviously not directly, because I didn't want him to fly over to the UK and come give me a visit. But no, I spoke a lot of shit about him on my podcast, and a lot of my thoughts and my reads were just completely wrong on the dude. So, I don't know if anybody's listening that's got a connection to Sterling, or if Sterling ends up tuning in himself. But man, I'm sorry. But yeah, it was I was completely wrong about Aljamain Sterling as a fighter. I was completely wrong about the fight. I was completely wrong about Brett Johns in this specific stylistic matchup. I actually love Brett Johns as a fighter, especially after what we saw with Pedro Munoz fight. The dude's an absolute warrior, so I've not got a bad word to say about him. But basically what it came down to, and the reason why this is my stupidest bet of the year, not just because of how much I downplayed Aljamain Sterling, but again, I reiterate, I've said this a couple of times in this podcast already, I analyse wrestlers and grapplers as my forte. I should never have picked the European wrestler and the European grappler over an American NCAA Division III wrestler. Just idiotic, man. Like a stupid bet to make. I think both of these I think this fight could be run back 10 times, and I think Sterling would win 8 or 9 times out of 10, just because there is that gulfing difference between American wrestling and European wrestling. So yeah, stupid bet from me. Everything involved in the bet was absolutely stupid. I had 2.5 units on Brett Johns at -105, just for reference. So, Lock, your stupidest bet of the year, my man.
Oof. I don't know if I was a little bit more comfortable with Brett Johns against Aljamain Sterling compared to this one that I'm about to give to you right now. Eric Spicely versus Darren Stewart, -181. I took the fucking dive on that one. You guys were kind of like, giving me the opposite side of it, but I wasn't hearing it at all. You know what I mean? Like doing the tape on Darren Stewart and seeing in his last fight that he got choked out by Julian Marquez by, like a front choke. It was almost like a it was a guillotine choke, but it was, it was against the cage. It wasn't really, it wasn't really locked up to the extent that, somebody a little bit more well-versed on the ground would be able to get out of. However, just seeing his, his reckless striking and he's a good striker. Don't get me wrong. Darren Stewart is a great striker, but when he gets into these firefights, if he gets clipped, he's going to go out, or he's going to, give up the sub like he did to Julian Marquez. And I really thought that Eric Spicely had the tools to get this fight to the ground, or even, even pull guard and get some sort of submission from there. But I think I was just a little bit too confident in Eric Spicely's ability to get a hold of Darren Stewart and try to make it a jiu-jitsu type of fight. However, it did not play out that way. Eric Spicely got completely torched. Second round, he got TKO'd. I feel like, just like you have a little bit more of a preferential treatment towards like grapplers and all that stuff. And I kind of have the same as well. And even with somebody with a good jiu-jitsu base like Eric Spicely, I may have given him a little bit more props than I should have, especially on the feet. And yeah, man, like as that fight was playing out, I was just like, fuck. Like I was just like, I can't believe he's not able to get a hold of him at all and not even get it into his realm. So yeah, as soon as that fight was over, that was probably the stupidest I've ever felt. And I just want to quickly interject my honorable mention was probably Volkan Ozdemir against Anthony Smith. I was very, very confident in that one. I truly didn't think that Anthony Smith was going to be able to handle the light heavyweight power from a true light heavyweight who was more so in his prime than Anthony Smith's past opponents with Shogun Rua and Rashad Evans. But yeah, I think that Eric Spicely against Darren Stewart definitely takes the cake, though.
Sure. And we move on to the next one. So, biggest lean of 2018 that you passed on and you had to watch that bet win.
Yes. You going to kick this one off, or you
No, man. You're the one with the positive vibes. I'm the one with the negative vibes. That's how we're rolling.
All right. So biggest lean that we passed on that eventually won. My runner-up has got to be Jussier Formiga against Ben Nguyen. Formiga was roughly around even money. I saw him dip to plus money at certain points, but yeah, man, I thought I had that one down. I was really into that. I thought that Formiga was going to be able to maybe even get it on the ground, get some sort of submission or something like that. And I thought he was better on the feet too, but I don't know. There's just like this little voice in the back of my head that was just like, maybe Ben Nguyen's going to clip him, or Ben Nguyen probably has a cleaner striking, and he would have good enough jiu-jitsu to stay out of anything that Formiga was going to throw at him. But lo and behold, Formiga throws this spinning fucking back fist and drops Nguyen and gets the win there. But that's my runner-up. I gotta say the one that takes the cake for me, and it's one that you're familiar with as well. We were given a seed on Mr. Brian Bouland over at Cage Warriors, and we did our tape. We looked at it.
Man,
I looked at it.
Just jog my memory.
You remember that one?
Yeah, yes. For
sure. So it was Ilia Topuria who was making his Cage Warriors debut. He was 5-0 at the time. What we saw on tape was, or at least what I saw on tape was, a very good grappler. He had good sense of timing. Very strong when he gets the fight to the ground. But the one question mark that we had was the competition that he had in those 5 fights. And at a certain point, you got to kind of put that out the window. You got to take the level of competition out the window. We've seen it throughout the UFC calendar as well, with like Dominic Reyes and these other guys who, you can attribute that their level of competition prior was not the best, but that doesn't really mean that they're a shitty fighter. You know what I mean? But again, that doesn't go with everybody. There's a guy that we saw in the Contender Series, Jordan Wright, who was just the complete can crusher, maybe the master of can crushing, just destroying all these guys. And then when he gets to the Contender Series, he gets starched. But with Ilia Topuria, he was plus 175 at a certain point. He closed around plus 140. We went into that thinking that I was going to bet Brian Bouland, and then I came out, kind of high on Topuria, but eventually passed on it. And I'm kicking myself to this day because I felt like it was, kind of obvious that he was going to win after that. And then I believe he got a dart stroke finish over Bouland within the first couple of minutes. So that one was a bit of a kick in the gut it's almost as bad as when you pass on something and it wins, and rather than, when you hit something and it loses. If you get what I mean there, it's just as much of a kick in the gut that that's money that could have been made. But discipline is what you got to put it towards at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and I think my words to you when I watched that tape when we were speaking about Topuria was he's fucking special. I'm sure those my words. And yeah, it's we felt at the time we had enough reason to make that pass, but then when he won so easily, it's almost like, man, I live for the wrestlers and grapplers. I knew the dude was fucking special, and yet I still passed on it. So I feel that for sure. And by the way, I've just quickly realised that you've taken the first one on this negative one, because this it's actually a bit.
It's kind of negative.
The negative one.
It's kind of negative.
Yeah.
It's kind of negative. The next one is kind of negative.
Yeah, for me, man, UFC Lincoln in August. Brian Barberena versus Jake Ellenberger. Man, I wanted to hit Brian Barberena in the distance so bad at -145. Do you know what? I don't really have a reason why I didn't. So yeah, for me, that was horrible to watch happen, because we all knew that Jake Ellenberger's chin was last seen in like 2012.
Still missing.
Yeah, still missing. Yeah, for sure. And Brian Barberena was aggressive and explosive. And, I use this phrase a lot. And when you add 2 + 2 together, sometimes you get 4. And that was this bet, and I didn't make it. So, yeah, really disappointed that I didn't hit that. The line was so good, man. It should have been like -250, -300. That prop in itself, Barberena straight outright should have been much higher than that. So, yeah, a really bad fight to pass on that I had to watch win. For sure. And then we move on to the next one, biggest lean of 2018 that you passed on but watch lose. So this is a good thing. So this is having a lean and you're thinking, I'm not going to hit that, and then it going on to lose, and that sigh of relief, like, yes, well, I thought this was going to happen and now I've seen it, such a good pass. And this was a difficult one for me, but ultimately I've gone with a fight from UFC Orlando back in February. Sarah McMahon versus Marion Renault. Man, I nearly bet Sarah McMahon anywhere between 3 and 5 units in that fight, and she was -225 as well, roughly, when I looked. So pretty much juice on the line, not too much, it's still playable. I play anything straight up to like -250. So it was quite juiced up compared to sort of where I limit myself. And Sarah McMahon is just being, like I said, she's a wrestler. She's an Olympic wrestler. So all the sort of things that I like, she knows where she's best. She looks for the takedown. The problem is she gets too lackadaisical on the mat and gets caught in submissions. I just didn't think Marion Renault was going to be the one to catch her with a submission off the bottom. So yeah, I was really high on Sarah McMahon to win that fight. I mean, this was back in February, so it's tough to sort of rack my head back to that far in the year when so much has happened in mixed martial arts to give a definite reason of why I actually passed on making that bet. I would assume it was the line, though, at -225 that I probably didn't like so much. But either way, really like Sarah McMahon in that fight. Really liked her style and what she brings to the table. And yeah, I just couldn't hit it, and she went on to get subbed. So that's my biggest lean that I passed and watched lose. What about you, man?
For me, it was back in February at UFC Austin. When this fight was announced, I was very high on Marcin Tybura. I'm like, you know what? This guy's the perfect stand-up and striking skills to give Derek Lewis, a fit. And that pretty much is what happened for 2.5 rounds. Then we get that patented Derek Lewis blitz at the end of the fight, and he pulls off the victory there. So I was very high on Tybura. We're getting close to even money on him as well. As soon as that fight was announced, I'm like, I got to hit this one. I mean, like, Derek Lewis obviously shows his deficiencies when he's fighting guys with a better striking skill set. But he always has that fucking last minute, just adrenaline rush where he's able to, put the power together and get these guys out of there. So I passed on Tybura there, for the better. And then Lewis, ends up stinging me later on in the year with that Volkov bet. But it's just a fucking lesson you got to learn the hard way when you're betting against a guy like Derek Lewis.
For sure. And guess who bet that fight, man? Guess who bet Marcin Tybura? So yeah, thanks for reminding me of that, man. And moving swiftly on to the next. So we've done sort of the best bets, bad bets, the good, the bad, the ugly sort of thing. So the last two are something a little bit different. So you can kick this one off, Lock. The most valuable lesson learned in 2018. You know, it doesn't matter how good you are as a handicapper, you've always got to learn, you've always got to improve and get the best out of yourself. So, what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned this year?
I gotta say that this lesson probably even it came from you, man. Halfway through the year, I was sitting, roughly around even. I wasn't at the highest of profits at that time, but that was when I was just sticking to my strict strategy of just finding one or two plays that I can call my lock of the night play, go 5 units deep on it, and then hope for the best. But at that time in the middle of the year, I was just, I just was nowhere. Like I wasn't losing a shit ton, but I wasn't winning a shit ton. So I need to figure out what I needed to change. And that's when we came up with the dog of the night, like moniker in a sense. And you had said, it's worth taking a shot on some of these dogs. And I just felt like I was so close-minded at the time where I'm like, you know what? No, this is my strategy. This is what I'm going to stick to. And this is what's going to get me to the top. And then once I started plugging in those dogs here and there, it started churning a little bit more of a profit. And I kind of attributed that to a discussion that me and you had, man. Like it's definitely a lesson that I learned, that risks are worth taking, especially if you have the solid, the film study behind it, the facts, the interviews, everything that you look at. And if you feel strongly about a certain underdog, it's worth taking a shot. And even if it's only 1 unit, 0.5 units, or 2 units, it's worth taking these shots, and it's paid off time and time again. With the Corey Anderson by decision over Glover Teixeira, the Daniel Cormier fight. I don't know if I would have bet that if I didn't have my dog of the night play thing going on. There's plenty of things. Alima Lay McFarlane inside the distance was one of my dog of the night plays. So I think my biggest lesson was, you can adapt and change your ways, but as long as you stick to your main strategy of, like for me, it's my lock of the night play. That's kind of my main strategy, but you can add wrinkles here and there to add to your betting game and your handicapping game, and it's going to pay off in the end. And for me, it really turned my year around, and it allowed it to be a lot more profitable than it probably would have been if I just stuck with my lock of the night plays.
Yeah, for sure, man. I can remember that conversation as well that we had, and just to echo what you said, I just felt at the time that you were missing out on a lot of really, really off lines. And I don't mean off as in just like, oh, that should be a bit closer, it's a little bit too wide. But like for example, a couple of weeks ago, I bet Mike Rodriguez and Joaquim Silva, and I got both of those guys at plus 175. They both cashed. Those were my only two bets of the night, and I was really confident in both of them. And I just felt, from your perspective, you were missing out on those Mike Rodriguez's and the Joaquim Silvas, the underdogs that do have more of a chance of winning than the favourites, just because you were scared of putting 5 units on that
on a dog on plus money. There's only one time where I actually hit or even bet a plus money lock of the night play, which was Ramazan Ameev against Sam Alvey way back in the day. I got him at like plus 105 or something like that. Small underdog, but that was the only time I ever played an actual underdog until I brought in this dog of the night, category in a sense.
Sure. Well, for me, my most valuable lesson learned this year is parlays. And it spans off a little what you said in regards to being close-minded. I was, all year, man, I've just been so arrogant towards parlays, I can't play a parlay because, always go straight, always play value. Don't be taking the juiced odds. MMA shouldn't have fighters more than minus 300. All these things, man, were in my head, and it wasn't until I hit a bit of a dip in form. So after I launched the premium bets, I was great for sort of like 3 or 4 events, and then I really did hit a dip in form where I lost 3 in a row. Then I won an event, but won it like 0.8 units, something really small. And then I went on to lose another 4 events, and I was just like, man, again, like I was thinking, what do I need to do to change this up? Like then I just had this realization, man, that the game, this MMA gambling game is changing. The betting lines aren't as close as what they were sort of last year. In fact, before November this year, my last parlay was November the year before, so I hadn't played a parlay for 12 months. And I was, like I say, the way the betting lines are lined now, it's so different to what it was 12 months ago. And the MMA gambling game's evolved and it's moving. And I almost felt like I wasn't moving with it. I was stuck and trying to be great in something that was evolving without me flowing with it, man. And I know this sounds real crazy and some people think, dude, it's just MMA gambling, but listen, when you're profiting in this game long term, it's not as simple as it's just MMA gambling. You know, it's there's so much to it, and you have got to move with it. And I just felt that with parlays, it was like, yeah, it was just something that I needed to get back into my strategy and into my game. And the other thing that I thought of as well is the amount of pretty much, in your words, locks that I've missed out on just because a fight was lined more than minus 250 is unbelievable. I've missed out on a lot of wins and a lot of profit over the last 12 months. And I've had a great year, man. I've had a plus 68 units year. So it's not as if I've had a bad year, but I feel that if I'd added parlays earlier, if I was less arrogant about the entire scenario, I'd have profited a little bit more.
You're really bang on with the parlays, man. Like the odds are definitely getting a lot heavier. But it's kind of like a double-edged sword here. I mean, like you might be getting a heavier favorite, but the odds on the dog might be a little bit better in the case of like Shogun and Tyson Pedro. I mean, that the odds might be heavier, but if you're sharp enough to pick those points and see that, Shogun shouldn't be a plus 400 against Tyson Pedro, then it works out. But in those other cases, like the Russia card that we had like how many 6 or 7 fighters that were over minus 500. And at a certain point, you got to start parlaying these guys if you want to.
That Russian card was the card that I should have played a parlay in. You look at my parlays this year. Obviously, this is a recent revelation or realization for me, should I say? Christos Giagos and Sadiq Yusuf both cashed absolutely easily. I did parlay Chad Laprise and Claudia Gadelia. Obviously, both of them lost. That was just, it is what it is. It was only a 2.5 unit parlay. Played both of those at minus 333 as well. So it's not as if I had to play sort of like 4 or 5 units on each of them straight to get a decent return. I could just play 2.5 units. I know it lost. I know it's 2.5 units, but it's better than, a potential 8 unit loss playing 4 on each straight. So then the next one that I played was Alexander Rakic and John Jones. So I wouldn't have bet Alexander Rakic against Devin Clark if it wasn't for me opening up to parlays again. I wouldn't have bet the greatest of all time, John Bones Jones, if it wasn't for this. I wouldn't have bet the easy money on Sadiq Yusuf. I wouldn't have bet the easy money on Christos Giagos, So yeah, for me, that's the biggest lesson that I've learned this year. And then moving on to the final one, the smartest piece of advice we can offer. So I'll kick this one off. Always be open to adapt and change things. So just as I mentioned with the parlays, the second that you become closed-minded to something that may actually benefit you, the second that you stop learning, man, and in this game you've got to learn, you've got to move with what's happening in the market, and you've got to evolve. It's a serious game, this. I do this to make money. I don't, yes, it's fun winning money, but it's serious, man. Like, I have clients paying me to make them money as well. So do you. It's a serious game. There's
pressure, dude. Like, there's definitely some pressure that comes with it. But when you get that W, and there's nothing that feels better than getting that W, whether it's a split decision or a fucking 10-second knockout for a W. It doesn't matter what it is. That W is that thrill is just amazing. But you got to learn to control it too, because it could get off the rails for some people, and they may not ever learn their lesson, and they might just keep going into the negatives, right?
Absolutely, man. So yeah, that's the smartest piece of advice I can offer. And sometimes you won't get that advice come to you that you need to change, that you need to adapt. Talk to people, man. Create a friendship on MMA Twitter with somebody else. Just talk. Like, I do feel that there's handicappers, or there will be handicappers out there that think that they have to keep themselves to themselves and not to have any outside noise. But I really disagree with that. I think that talking is a good thing. Not tailing other people and making bets that aren't your own thoughts and your own beliefs. I totally disagree with that. And you'll never profit long term if you don't put the trust in yourself and you just keep copying others. But just talking, like we've mentioned earlier, throwing seeds to your friends, they'll throw seeds back to you. Just like I say, just talking, and sometimes that'll help you get a bit of advice and help you make a decision where you are adapting and you are changing to improve and better yourself. So for me, that's the smartest piece of advice that I can offer anyway. What about you, man?
Yeah, so in regards to advice, I mean, it might come from certain people, like, when you had given me the dog of the night type of idea, or it might just come from yourself. It might just generate, like, it just might just come from yourself in terms of learning from bad bets that you made in the past. But one thing I want to, kind of take off from you in a sense is that, yeah, talk to people, man. Like, we have some dicks in the community for sure, but we also have a lot of guys that are willing to help people too. And you might not have to just be like, oh, all right, this guy's right just because he said it. I'm sure he did the tape studying and I'm sure he did the work. But take those seeds and run with it in terms of go and do your own studying and see if you see the same things that other people are saying. And if you don't see the same things, maybe you might bet the other side now. So there might be a certain thing where you're going into a certain fight and looking at, okay, I'm going to bet this guy. I'm going to talk to some people about it. I'm going to do my tape studying. And, if I'm happy with what I hear from other people, I'm going to take that into consideration more than what I saw on actual tape. So, the best advice that I can give to anybody really is just trust what you believe based on what you see on film and what you know from the facts that are available to you. Just one thing that I've harped on before, like the Shogun bet, it's something that came up in myself in terms of my own gut feeling that Tyson Pedro is not a guy that you can trust, especially at minus 400. And even though almost everybody else out there was on him, and even parlaying him and saying that he's a lock just based on, he's a younger, more athletic guy, but there's the deficiencies like the fight IQ that will play into a factor against a veteran like Shogun Hua. So it's really what you believe in, and don't let anybody stray you from what you believe. Be open to the seeds, but confirm those seeds or confirm those suspicions based on your own research. Because if you can't trust yourself, then you shouldn't really even be giving out advice. You shouldn't be, handicapping or anything like that. But it really comes down to being confident in what you have gathered and what you've seen with your own two eyes, rather than, just going off of suspicion or going off of what the popular pick seems to be. So that's probably the best advice I can give. And I'm seeing, even in myself, I'm seeing it built on more and more and more. And once you start winning some of these bets where you seem to be like the only guy that's on it, that confidence builds itself. So it's kind of a work in progress for everybody and even myself, but just trust yourself. Just trust yourself as long as you know yourself as well, that you've put in the work. That's what matters. Just put in the work. And once you can trust the final outcome that you've decided on, just go with it.
Sure, man. Great advice. So that's all she wrote, guys. Please feel free to drop your own reviews of your bets in 2018 in the comment section too. It's always fun to hear the great, the good, the bad, and the ugly in this gambling game. Thank you for listening, and we're excited to kick off 2019 with winning ways. So, Lock, before we hit the Newsome MMA 2-minute plug, what do you need to mention, man?
Pretty much just hit me up on Twitter. I'm probably one of the more engaging guys out there at MMA LOTN. I love having conversations. Hit me in the DMs. We can talk on the timeline, whatever it is. Check out the website. It's kind of bare bones at the moment, but we're adding some more stuff. MMALOTN.ca. And then the YouTube channel as well, MMA LOTN. I'm gaining a little bit more traction there. I got my man Big Rob helping me out with the studio and putting everything together for me. So it's just a nice, clean, crisp video breakdown for pretty much every UFC fight. Other than that, man, just look forward to the tape index in 2019 on Newsome's website. I'm really excited to be working on that with him, and then also keeping Lock Fight League going as well. So we're entering 4th season right now. You guys can get into the 5th season probably in February, but just keep keep up to date on my timeline at MMA LOTN on Twitter. Newsome, thank you so much for giving me this platform as always. And let's make sure that 2019 is just as profitable, if not more, than 2018.
It's my pleasure, man. Now for the quick Newsome MMA 2-minute plug. First of all, I'd like to talk about Concussion Pro 1, who are partnering Newsome MMA. Concussion Pro 1 is the world's first dedicated concussion supplement supporting brain health and performance. The product is honestly groundbreaking, and there isn't another supplement on the market like it. The unique formula that makes up Concussion Pro 1 has been developed and created by some of the world's most decorated sports scientists to help protect and support the brain and its performance. Approved by the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation, Concussion Pro 1 provides some amazing support to the brain. It increases mental performance, faster recovery from injury, reduced inflammation post-impact, improved neural protection, and much more. With professional athletes such as Alexander Rakic, Mark Diakese and Scott Askham using Concussion Pro 1, you can already see how vital this product is not only for MMA but for all contact sports. Find out more information by clicking on any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website or go to concussionpro1.com. Secondly, please check out the sponsors of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. I'm a great case study for CBD. In the MMA gambling world, people often talk about sweats and nerves as they're watching the fighter that they've bet on fight. These feelings are absolutely real, and because of this, I vape CBD to help relax me on fight night. To be honest, I didn't think it would make much of a difference, but it really does, and I would recommend it to anybody. You can access the offers from my sponsorship by clicking on any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website, and you can also get 15% off your first order by using promo code Newsome MMA. And finally, please go and check out the bookmaker mybookie.ag. This book is pretty awesome. They're always quick to release the betting lines for upcoming MMA fight cards. They have plenty of props to choose from too, and if that isn't enough, they even offer a 50% sign-up bonus up to $1,000 or currency equivalent when you sign up as a new member. To find MyBookie, you can click on the banner on the homepage of the Newsome MMA website or go to mybookie.ag and make sure you use promo code Newsome MMA for the bonus. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and until next time, goodbye.